Have you ever stopped to think about what really happens when you just vanish from someone's life? I'm not talking about slowly fading out. I'm talking about disappearing completely. No messages, no calls, no contact at all. What would that person feel in your absence? We live in a world where too many people think they can take others for granted. So, let's flip the script. Disappear, and I promise you, their world will shake. Welcome to the most important video you'll watch today. If you've ever been in a relationship, friendship, or situation where someone got way too comfortable treating you like just an option, this is for you. Today, we're diving into a concept that might completely change the way you see your connections. Let's get into it. Lesson 1: the confusion of disappearance. When someone vanishes, confusion floods the mind of the person left behind. Questions swirl nonstop. What did I do wrong? Was it something about me? The mind hunts for answers, invents scenarios, and tries to make sense of a sudden, drastic change. But here's the kicker: no answer ever comes. That silence creates chaos. You feel trapped in an emotional maze with no map to escape. Stoic philosophy tells us to accept what we can't control, but that doesn't erase the sting of doubt. When there's no explanation, the mind writes its own story, and 9 times out of 10, it's far worse than reality. Uncertainty becomes the real enemy, and the desperate search for a reason. It never stops. Lesson 2: the first blow, deep rejection. When someone disappears without warning, the very first thing you feel is rejection. You might try to rationalize it, you might try to hide it, but it's there, loud and heavy. It's as if every ounce of emotional investment you made was tossed away in a heartbeat. The detachment hits hard. Deep down, you feel disposable. Your heart weighs heavy, and your ego takes a hit. And the hardest part? Not knowing why. Stoicism tells us we can control our reaction, but rejection is an emotional punch that tests that lesson every single time. Lesson 3: internalized guilt. After confusion comes guilt. You start asking, was it my fault? Could I have done something differently? Without answers, it's easy to assume you failed somehow, even when you didn't. Stoicism reminds us to separate what's our responsibility from what's not. But when emotions run high, that's easier said than done. The lack of communication leaves a void that guilt is all too eager to fill. And that's the cruel truth of sudden disappearance. The person left behind almost always blames themselves, even if they did absolutely nothing wrong. Lesson 4: the quiet anger. Disappearance doesn't just leave sadness behind. It stirs up anger. Not always the explosive kind. Often it's silent, bottled up, and running deep. You feel anger at yourself for not noticing the signs. Anger at them for leaving without a word. Anger at the situation for even existing. But without an explanation, that anger has nowhere to go. Stoicism tells us to turn anger into something constructive, but in the middle of the pain, that's a tall order. And so the resentment simmers quietly, building up inside. The truth is, being left without a single word is one of the hardest things to forgive, and one of the hardest things to forget. This isn't just about them disappearing. It's about how you reclaim your power afterward. And that is where the real change begins. Lesson 5: the anxiety of the unknown. When someone disappears, the anxiety of not knowing takes over. The questions are endless, but the answers, none. The uncertainty about what happened, how the other person is doing, or even the reason for their departure creates deep emotional distress. Your mind can't stop wondering, are they okay? Was this final? Is there still a chance for reconciliation? This anxiety turns into a constant mental loop. Stoicism teaches us not to obsess over the future, but when you're left in the dark, panic is a natural response. The fear of the unknown is one of the most primal human emotions, and not knowing what's happening to someone who vanished is profoundly unsettling. Not knowing what to do with that anxiety is equally painful. The silence becomes deafening, and your mind spirals into insecurity. This isn't just anxiety about the future, it's the anxiety of everything you don't know and can't control. Lesson 6: relief, but only for a moment. For some people, a disappearance can initially feel like relief. When the separation happens, it might feel as though a weight has been lifted. especially if the relationship was tense or filled with constant emotional stress. But that relief is fleeting. Stoicism teaches us to seek balance and inner peace. But in this case, the detachment only brings a temporary calm, followed quickly by loneliness and longing. It can feel like a much-needed breather at first, but soon the need for connection and closure takes over. True relief only comes when the mind fully accepts the situation and processes its emotions in a healthy way. Until then, that first wave of freedom is nothing more than a false sense of peace. Lesson 7: The weight of longing and melancholy. Longing is inevitable. When someone disappears, the moments you once lived fully become nothing more than distant memories. Melancholy creeps in and pulls your mind into the past. Stoicism tells us to live in the present and accept loss, but longing is not something you can just switch off. You start recalling the good times, the conversations, the laughter, the moments shared. Even if the disappearance was necessary, their absence leaves a void that's hard to fill. Melancholy sets in when you realize that the time you had with them can never be recovered. The loss isn't just about them, it's about what could have been. That reflection on happy moments now gone only deepens the feeling of loneliness. Lesson 8: Reflection on your own behavior. Disappearance forces deep introspection. When someone leaves without warning, you start wondering what you could have done differently. Stoicism teaches us to reflect objectively on our actions, without getting lost in emotions. But when the abandonment comes without explanation, self-criticism takes center stage. Did I say something wrong? Was I selfish? It's uncomfortable, but also an opportunity for growth. The absence of the other person acts as a mirror, reflecting your own behavior back to you. Sometimes you feel like you never got the chance to show who you truly are or to correct a misunderstanding. Though painful, disappearance pushes you toward a kind of self-awareness that can only come through loss. Lesson 9: The search for reconnection. Over time, longing and reflection can turn into a desire to reconnect. Stoicism tells us to live in the present and accept what cannot be changed. But emotionally, reconciliation can feel like a necessity. The person left behind starts feeling the pull to reach out, to get answers, to understand what happened. This search isn't just about closure. It's about healing and restoring the bond. But reconnection isn't always possible. And Stoicism reminds us that not every relationship is meant to be revived. Sometimes, silence is the best path to inner peace. Yet the urge to reconnect is powerful, a deeply human need for understanding and relief, even in pain. Lesson 10: The impact on ego and self-esteem. When someone disappears without explanation, the blow to your ego and self-esteem is inevitable. Feeling less important or less worthy of an explanation leaves a deep wound. The ego often feeds on validation and meaningful connections. When those are cut off abruptly, the sense of rejection can eat away at your confidence. Stoicism teaches us to separate our identity from the actions of others, but that's a difficult task when emotions are involved. You might begin to question your attractiveness, your value as a friend or partner, even your ability to maintain healthy relationships. This creates an internal conflict, the need to feel loved and accepted colliding with the pain of being left behind. The truth, however, is that your worth is not determined by someone else's actions. Real peace comes when you anchor your self-esteem in your own essence, free from the need for external validation. Lesson 11: The need for understanding and closure. Finally, when someone disappears, the need for understanding and closure is one of the strongest reactions. Without a clear explanation, an emotional void remains, and the mind becomes obsessed with trying to fill it. The person left behind searches endlessly for reasons: why things didn't work out, why there wasn't a chance to end the relationship in a healthy way. Stoicism teaches us to accept that not everything in life comes with an immediate or fair explanation, and that we must learn to live with what we can't control. But the truth is, seeking answers is a deep human need. Emotional closure doesn't happen without understanding, and that often requires communication, reflection, and sometimes forgiveness. Deep down, people aren't just searching for answers, they're searching for peace. And here's the harsh truth: real closure often doesn't come from the other person, it comes from within. Lesson 12: The fear of future rejection. After someone disappears, the fear of being rejected again becomes a constant shadow. When a person chooses to vanish without explanation, it can leave behind a lasting insecurity. The feeling of being discarded without any closure creates a fear that the same thing could happen again, not just with that person, but with anyone in the future. This fear can damage trust, building emotional walls that make forming new connections harder. Stoicism tells us fear is natural, but it shouldn't control us. Still, for the one left behind, the thought lingers, will I be abandoned again? This worry can hold you back from giving yourself fully to a new relationship, feeding a cycle of hesitation and self-protection. Breaking that cycle means rebuilding your confidence and remembering that the past doesn't have to define the future. Lesson 13: the loss of meaning and purpose. When someone disappears without a word, one of the deepest impacts is a sudden loss of meaning and purpose. Sometimes that person was a source of inspiration or motivation in your life. Their absence can leave you feeling directionless, as though a vital part of your energy has been stripped away. Stoicism teaches that true peace comes from within, and that purpose should be found in ourselves, not in others. But in the wake of sudden detachment, it's hard not to feel lost. This void can make you question the purpose behind your actions and relationships, especially if that connection was central to your happiness. Rebuilding meaning takes time and self-discovery. And ironically, the pain of forced detachment can become the spark for personal reinvention. Lesson 14: the effect on your social circle. The disappearance of one person can ripple far beyond the two people directly involved. It can shake your social network as well. When someone walks away without explanation, friendships, mutual connections, and even family relationships can be affected. Those left behind may feel awkward about whether to stay in touch with people still connected to the one who disappeared. Stoicism teaches emotional independence, but the reality is that in a web of interconnected relationships, the absence can create tension and discomfort. You might feel pressure to take sides, or face questions from others who also notice the disappearance. The butterfly effect of someone leaving isn't just emotional. It can disrupt entire social dynamics, making recovery even harder. Lesson 15: reassessing your values and priorities. When someone vanishes without warning, you're forced to reassess your own values and priorities. Stoicism often reminds us of the importance of self-discipline and knowing what truly matters to us. Their absence might be the wake-up call you didn't know you needed, showing you how much you've been giving to others while neglecting your own peace. This is a moment of deep introspection. You start to see that maybe you put them on a pedestal, ignoring your own needs in the process. Disappearance becomes the catalyst for asking the hard questions. How much of my happiness depends on other people? The lesson is clear: true happiness comes from within, not from the behavior of others. Reassessing your priorities allows you to let go of connections that add no real value to your life. If you've been through this, you know how powerful these lessons are. Maybe you've been the one left behind. Maybe you've been the one who walked away. Either way, every disappearance tells two stories: the one you live and the one you learn from.